Hello everyone. Today I have a very special guest with me, my friend Pinaki from IIT Bombay Structural Engineering Department. And after that, he went on to work as a structural designer. And let's know more from him about his journey and what all you can learn from him. We'll get to know about his career, and from that, you can take points, and it may be helpful in your own career. So, hello Pinaki. How are you doing? And first of all, let's start with your BTech, like where you did BTech from, and how did you decide to do MTech in structures, and from there, what was your plan for your career?
I am good, thank you. Uh, so I did my BTech from VNIT Nagpur, and it's actually in VNIT Nagpur itself that I had decided, like in the third year, that I wanted to do my master's in structural engineering.
Okay.
So that's where my interest grew, and it's kind of fascinated with structures. That's how, yeah. So that's how I decided. So particularly in my third year, like I did a project under my professor, and I was quite interested, got exposed to a lot of things that in that project. So yeah, that's how I actually decided.
Yeah.
What
So
I,
so from there on, I mean, when did you start your GATE preparation, and what did you think of? I mean, normally people have these ideas of joining PSUs or other government exams. So what was your thinking back then? What all were you thinking when you made these decisions?
so I had never decided to join a PSU as such, or like Indian Engineering Services was something like this there at the back of my mind, but I wasn't completely convinced as such. But I always wanted to be a structural designer. Uh, and I didn't prepare particularly beforehand for GATE, and I did prepare GATE to get into PSU. So my only motive to get GATE was to do a
Okay.
master's.
Hmm.
And uh, fortunately, I got a good rank. So the way I started preparing was that I didn't join any classes, but what particularly helped me was that uh, I was decent at my studies, and I used to pay attention to all my subjects, and my score was, and my CGPA was good enough, and that kind of gave me a good background. So, in a full-fledged manner, I actually started my GATE preparation 6 months prior to the exam, and that's when I kind of revised everything. Like, all throughout my 4 years, I had a strict timetable and everything, and since I had a good background, I could pick things up easy,
Hmm.
and yeah,
Okay, so yeah, as we know, you got structural engineering in IIT Bombay. Now, coming to that, a lot of students have this thinking that they'll be working on AutoCAD or some sort of designing software when they come for their MTech studies. Like there is a different imagination in a lot of students' minds that they'll be designing buildings or that sort of something they'll be learning if they go for masters in structural engineering. So I would like to know, is it the case, or what you learn is something different from the usual expectation?
So, yeah, I do get this a lot of times. Like, yeah, people have that kind of expectations. But one thing we should always like, which I would always say students like when they're going for masters, is like the important thing is not that you know how to use a software and how to design a building in a software. The important thing is like how good your concepts are. Like for example, in masters, uh, you're supposed to learn your earthquake engineering concepts properly, your structural mechanics concepts properly. So whatever you couldn't do here in your BTech, you should do that in your masters. And regarding the softwares, you could use any software. Like it's not a problem. But the main issue, or rather, yeah, the main issue with current students, like as I was talking to one of the professors, said like students are not that much into concepts, and that is something which should be like taken care of in masters. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
you should get thorough in your concepts, and building design and everything can be done when you're doing your master's project or your post projects or anything like that. So I think the focus should be more on getting your knowledge skill.
Yeah. So the next question, coming to your like your job, as you were placed during the placement in IITB. So I want to know the nature of your job, and associated with that, like apart from concepts. I mean, a lot of students don't have any idea. Like they just know that yeah, I should prepare for this government exam. I should prepare for GATE. But even those who want to do MTech don't really know what kind of work they'll be doing. I mean, at max they can know like, okay, I'm interested in structural engineering, but they really don't have much idea the kind of work they'll get if they get a job as a structural designer. So I mean, based on these points, tell a little more about your job.
Yeah, a valid question. This is something even I was wondering when I did my master's. So I'll tell you typically what kind of role or rather roles I went through like while I was working for 4 years. So initially, all the graduate engineers, we are all started with a simple thing like you do a beam design, you do a column design. So ETAS model or STAR model will be given to you, all the forces will be there and all. So you just have to take and like start doing the detailing, the reinforcement detailing and everything. So that's required like in the initial years, like to get a feel of the numbers, like what sizes are required for such a height of the building. So and when you gradually move ahead, like after 2 years, 3 years, then you start getting like kind of more responsibilities, like to handle a building or like on your own. Like you're supposed to design it on your own, right from the scratch. So you build an ETABS model or a START model, put the loads and everything, see how it behaves in an earthquake and a wind, and kind of talk to the architects if something is not working. Like sometimes the architects are very rigid, like they want the walls here, they don't want the walls there, or the wall thicknesses should be like that. So you kind of have to negotiate, try to explain them like in a very like in a very scientific way that
Hmm.
why things work and why things don't work. That kind of coordination is required. Yeah, I don't know if I answered that correctly, like the way you wanted it to
But yeah, it makes sense. So I mean, let's say I mean, asking from someone's point of view who is in probably third year, second year, third year, maybe final year, and is interested in a career in structural engineering, structural design, basically. So do they always need to go for masters, seeing from whatever you have seen in your companies? So do they always need a master's degree, or they can learn something like skills like the software or some sort of skills they can gather, and directly after their BTech can they go for a job, and which is as good as something, I mean, if not as good, something better than the field engineer or site engineer job in civil?
So when it comes to, as far as I know, when it comes to building engineering or bridge engineering, and up to some extent even in oil and gas industry, people prefer masters
Okay.
because master students have like a better background.
Hmm.
Like I said, like earthquake engineering, a lot of other things, and BTECs are sometimes they lack things. And even if these companies hire BTECs, the role is very limited. As in, you'll be asked to check on the shop drawings, or maybe do some kind of a design. Like when I say design, not structural design, but rather some graphic kind of design,
Hmm.
which may not be very uh, may not be very interesting. But yeah, these people generally prefer masters most of the
Okay.
times.
And like going ahead in your career as you are going for MSc, so what was the, I mean, what did you think and why did you think of going for in MSc, and that too in Germany?
So, so as I said, like I was quite interested in structures, and then I wanted to get a good exposure, like what's happening in India in the industry, in the building industry. But then what I felt was lacking over here is, which is again my personal opinion, is that people are not very innovative when it comes to building industry. Like very standard procedures,
Hmm.
standard protocols. That this is how things should be done. And Europe specifically, and certain universities in US, they are very much into shell structures, parametric engineering, and which is something not very encouraged over here, I would say, or uh, if not encouraged, is not explored that much. So, and that is the reason I'm going to Germany, because that is kind of like the place from where the tensile fabric structure kind of the whole
Mhm.
concept emerged from there. So, and I uh, was particularly one university, Stuttgart University, where I was following the work of the researchers over there.
Another question that I would think a lot of students will have, like they consider structural engineering to be something out of the like some sort of rocket science and to be a very difficult branch when they are in college, and it is also contributed by sometimes lack of faculties, and sometimes they need a little more time to understand those concepts. But I mean, seeing that, can an average person go in this field and make a career, go into the industry design? I mean, if someone is enthusiastic, if someone is interested, is it really that tough?
Uh, yeah, this is definitely not rocket science. And personally, I don't think so. Any person is average or anyone is smarter. So, what defines you, as you said rightly, is like if you're interested, definitely you should go for that. I know a lot of problems are there because you don't have the right faculty and everything. But I think if you are really interested, a person, like right now we have so much resources available. Like personally, when I felt like my professor wasn't teaching well, I would which hasn't happened, but I would go for all the NPTEL videos or like
Hmm.
some EDX courses or something like that, and further explore that topic. And and regarding like if you say like some people are average, they're not able to grasp the concepts properly. I don't think so. That's a big problem because once you are in the industry, there'll always be someone better than you. Like even if you are good, there'll always be someone better than you, and you will take more time to grasp certain concepts. And everyone knows this. So I think what's important is like if you are really interested into that, and if you are interested in that, you'll definitely do it, no matter what.
So coming back to the college students at the BTech level, a lot of students, let's say, even though if they're planning to do masters right now or maybe in the future, what like concepts is one part of the learning, obviously, but how can they get to understand what is currently going in the industry, and some hands-on on some basic software if they want to do so? What kind of projects they should take up? Like, let's say I want to learn ETABS or I want to learn STAD. So what would be the right approach to understand that software?
So basically, when I started out with STAR or ETABS, I didn't start out with a big project or a big project like that. So the way I would train myself is like, let's say I'm doing a structural problem, like it's a simple portal frame,
Hmm.
okay.
Hmm.
And the way my professor trained me is that if you are doubtful about your solution, just model it in STAR and see.
Hmm.
You know that I felt at that time it was a very like a very usual small advice. But then now I realize the importance of it because you do that in and out, day in and day out, like every day. Like if you want to be really good at a software, if you're doing some problem by hand in your college, try to model it in STAR and also see. If you're doing anything, like even if you're like, let's say, forget about structure analysis, you're doing steel design,
Hmm.
there'll always be some portal frame or something like that. Try to model it and start and see. Like those simple problems, when you start doing it, you get like really comfortable with the software.
Hmm.
So
Even like the existing question, what we have, what we are trying to solve as a part of our college curriculum, if you try to just do those questions with the help of the software, that itself,
exactly,
yeah, that itself can,
exactly,
yeah, and in that process you will learn. I mean, the question as well as the software, both the things you'll be learning better.
exactly,
And there will be some
exactly,
inherent interest in that.
exactly. And when you model it in STAR or ETABS, like you'll always have that. Okay, you'll always try to introduce certain complications into that and to experiment
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Okay, what if I keep the support like this? What if I put the load like this? And that's how people learn. And frankly, that's what is expected also when you get into the industry.
That's nice. So I think this is all from my side. If you have any particular suggestion for the young budding engineers who are maybe kind of lost and want to understand what all they can do in their career, do you have any word of advice for them?
Uh, Not an advice, but rather a suggestion, like which I have seen often, is that people try to write GATE, they try to write engineering services, or like try to get into PSU, thinking that it's a. I would again say that like they think of it as a glamorous job. Okay, but
Yeah.
rather people should be going for their interest and not going behind the glamour, the kind of perks you will get. Because see, if you kind of and you would also know that, like Aditya, you also know this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah.
People try to get into IUCL or something, and then they keep thinking, "Oh, I'm not fit for this. Maybe I should go for an MBA, or maybe I should write engineering services exam again."
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen people even after doing their MTech, they kind of feel lost, and then they say like, "Okay, I think we'll go back to doing MBA."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't run behind all these glamorous jobs, but rather what you want to do.
Mm.
And even if you fail in that, or like if you have a like those bad phases, you will always be able to get out of it. Otherwise, you'll always be running back and
Yeah.
forth.
Adding to that, actually a lot of I mean, as we grow up, we have heard this, like, if you do well in 10th, your life is set. If you do well in 12th, your life is set. I think these exams and, engineering services or any sort of PSU, they are also following on that same trend. People are fed, these kids are fed that if they clear this IOCL exam, if they become engineering services officer, their life is set. It's like you join that day and there is no more to do in your life. But that's not how
Yeah,
it works. As soon as you get it, you will be open to a new whole world, and you may be questioning yourself, okay, am I fit for this job? I want to explore new things now. So that sort of thing it can keep coming to you, like maybe 10 years down the line from where we are also right now, it can keep coming. But so that part of the mentality also has to be changed, where you are like, if I get this, my life is set. That just doesn't happen. Like, even for you went into some job and now you're again going to your studies, like you're going for MSc. So that sort of thing has to be, that
yeah,
mindset has to be changed.
yeah, exactly. There's no happily ever after thing.
Yeah, it's not there. It's consistent. It's the like life of consistent work, and constantly looking for what's next. Like, you can have contentment, but at the same time you will be, if you have a learning mindset, you will be always looking for learning the next better thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I agree with that. Like one of my seniors, like he went into ISC and he got a good rank, but he was frustrated there after 2 3 years.
Yeah.
But another of my friend, he was like super happy. So it's like the questions that we should ask ourselves, like, do I want to do a technical management kind of a thing, or I want to get into an administrative role, or I want
Hmm.
to get into pure engineer?
Hmm.
That's when you make the correct decision.
Yeah, for the same reason, actually, students have a lot more resources from where they can get to know what's the life in IOCL or what's the life in ONGC. But nobody much is talking about, if you get into a job, if you do masters, like at max it will be like, I'll do masters from IIT something, but after then again what? That sort of picture is not yet completed for majority of the people. Like, even when we went, we didn't have that clarity in our minds, what after IIT. So this is the, I hope that these sort of interviews help all these students to figure out, get to know. It will give them some exposure to know this side of civil engineering also, which is not widely available outside.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, just to add to that, like, if people want to think that, and want to know rather, like, what is there after Comtech. So, what I can say is like there are like huge companies, big companies. Like, I
Airbus
don't want
is
to take the
there.
building industry.
Yeah, no,
Airbus is there. That's like pure
yeah,
structures.
yeah, yeah. And
Then
which I
even
don't think people from civil will be considering that you can get a job into something like Airbus. It's
exactly,
not about
exactly.
designing any building.
And
Yeah,
it's so interesting when you look
yeah,
at those
yeah.
projects and everything, like the kind of projects Kobe does, like
Hmm.
for their uh, offshore wind farm foundations, or their bridge design, or the
Hmm.
viaduct design.
Hmm.
And I think a person having a sound knowledge in structural engineering, having done their masters from another premium institutes, only they'll have a good background.
Yeah.
Like
And that
uh,
really
back
makes
to that.
this whole field exciting also. not the same two-story house you have been seeing around you. That's obviously not
Yeah,
going to excite you, but knowing that these sort of possibilities are also there, you can make a career that can lead to you can, I mean, at some point you can work on such exciting projects, also such innovative designs you can work on, that
yeah,
that can really that's something to live for, basically.
exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, I did like couple of projects like uh, which I cannot name since I left my firm,
Mhm.
but I was very happy with it. Like,
Hmm.
it kind of gives you a sense of satisfaction that you did it. When you write it on your resume, go anywhere else, you'll have a like a portfolio of it. Like, yeah, this so and so person is expert at such and such structures. So it kind of adds value.
That's really nice. So with that, I think I mean, this call would be useful and helpful for the students, and it will help them figuring out, letting them know what is this other side after MTech, what after MTech. So it was nice to talk to you, and uh, we'll be coming up with more such interviews for you in the future. If you have any more questions to ask Pinaki, you can comment here or you can call us. And thank you for joining us today.